All right,
Awesome.
here we go. Hello, everybody. All right. Everyone, welcome. My name's Jeremy. I'm from GradAustralia. I'm here with Jess and Abbey from Project Everest Ventures. I'm just going to share my screen and go through a few housekeeping slides before we get started. But if I could ask that everyone pop themselves on mute, that would be greatly appreciated just for the beginning and the presenting just at first. Thank you, everyone. So welcome to the Project Everest Ventures live Q&A session. Essentially, the agenda for today is we're going to welcome Abbey and Jess through as they're going to talk through Project Everest Ventures from a bit of an overview perspective. And then from there, we're going to have questions from yourselves for a period of 45 minutes up until 12:45. In regards to a few things, in regards to housekeeping, if I could ask that everyone keep your microphones on mute until otherwise stated. Please ask your questions at the appropriate time within the Zoom chat box, which is at the bottom part of your screen. And this is going to be recorded. So if everyone could please keep that in mind, these videos are going to be used on their GradAustralia profile in future. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll pass it on to yourself, Abbey.
Wonderful. So hi, my name's Abbey and Jess is here as well. So we just to introduce ourselves, and then we'll go through a quick overview before we get into the questions and answers. So I became involved with Project Everest a bit over a year ago. I've gone through multiple stages, came through as an intern while I was still studying, then went through a training program into leadership and went overseas and did 2 months in 2 different countries in agriculture-based projects as a team leader, and then was further trained into senior leadership to manage larger groups of people and multiple projects at once, and went back overseas to India to run a senior leadership capacity and looked after a large group of people. And now I work full-time in a graduate role with the company around communications, university relationships, and team management. So that's a little bit about me. I also just graduated from an environmental science degree at RMIT University in Melbourne. So that's me. Jess, did you want to go over yours?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Jess, and I'm one of the co-founders of Project Everest. My study background is in development, so international development, so looking at crisis across borders and what causes poverty and that disparity, and what we can do with policy in that area to alleviate some of that. I work with university relationships, trying to get recognition for the work that you do with us through to universities. And I also work in student opportunities, so talking to students and making sure that we have the right people on project with us. Because it's not for everyone. It's really challenging, and it's definitely not for everyone. So talking to the right people and making sure that they know what they're up for the challenge, and passionate about the work that we do as well. So I get to talk to a lot of really cool people all the time. So it's pretty special.
Lovely, thank you. So just reiterate, I'm about to share my screen and we'll have a bit of an overview. There's going to be some videos, lots of pictures. It's really helpful for just getting a really clear idea of what it is we're doing, because it's quite a unique space. So yeah, if everyone's mics can be on mute, it should help the bandwidth if the cameras are off too. And then once we go into questions, we can put mics and cameras back on. So I will just share my screen. And feel free to send any of those questions through the chat. So is that all working? Everyone can see that?
It's working great.
Okay, awesome, fantastic. So the first thing that we're going to play is just a video. So this is footage from Malawi in Africa last summer. And these are a number of different projects and just the students who are working on the projects talking a little bit about what they're doing in their daily routine. So I'm just going to play that one.
Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going out to Zipline Clinic, which is one of the rural. Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going out to Zipline Clinic, which is one of the rural clinics in the communities of Lantau and Malawi.
We're here today in Limby Market to collect some more data about our mobile money surveys.
One team will be holding a community meeting and the other team will be getting some feedback from existing customers to see how the unit's going and see where we can make any improvements.
So that's just that little intro so that you can get that overview before we start going into a little bit more depth and context. But first, we want to reference, obviously, we're in the midst of a global pandemic and the work we do is overseas. So I just want to reassure you that we take this very seriously. We stay very up to date on all the information around safety and security. And for this reason, we usually take people overseas in June and July, but we've cancelled those programs and we're looking to summer. And around that, we're looking to make sure that if there's any changes in summer that, or the availability to go away in summer, that we're on top of that as well. But in the face of all of this, it's also really important to mention that the pandemic is going to make all of these issues faced around the world there's even more pressure on these issues, and this is the space that we're working in. So all of our projects address these United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are set to be achieved in the next 10 years. And that's already a huge feat. And there's a lot of different goals underneath each one of those sections, but it's addressing what is the current state of the world today. And these facts are things that we hear periodically about the challenges that are being faced in other countries and even domestically. But it's all of them sort of address that it's not necessarily that we don't have these resources around the world. It's just that not everybody has equal access to them. And that still 8 people can have more accumulative wealth than 3.5 million, which is just massive. It's not that we don't have it, it's that it's not shared equally. And even though these issues are very real, they're not necessarily in the forefront of our minds. And as university students, there are other things that are important that do face us. And that's part of why we go to university. It's to increase our skill set and understanding and knowledge so that you are able to get a job more readily. And what we've seen is that these are the 5 things, and this is a study, it's listed here as 2016, but these 5 qualities came up again in 2019 as the top 5 things that they're looking for, graduate employers are looking for. And as you can see, one of these things is academia, and the rest of them are things that you need to gain from having experience, applying these things and learning from that experience. But even still, we're still looking at statistics like it's 2.6 years on average to get a job in your chosen field. And it's just, that's because it's a highly competitive space and it's just really challenging. So this is a real problem, and there's a lot being put in from different areas, both universities and external bodies, to equip people and empower them with the tools to be better enabled within their careers in the future. So these are two issues that we address from Project Everest in terms of the global issues and then issues that face students, and how can you bring the two together. Now, when you think about the space of what's going on in the world and global challenges, usually we look to charities and government to have influence over this or be working on ways to improve this. And these are 2 arms of international development. But what we've seen is that these are growing issues and they're wicked problems, and we need to have more adaptive solutions, and we want to bolster our efforts in terms of how can we make progress here. And one almost unscathed influence in the world is business, in terms of there is such a presence that they can have and a power that businesses can have. And that's where we're seeing this new emerging side of international development called the independent sector or social enterprise. And that's what we tap into. And it might be an unfamiliar term, but most of you will be familiar with Tesla. And this fits the social enterprise model because it's using business, which we're all familiar with. If you need to purchase a car, you would do so with Honda, Ford, whatever it might be. But what Tesla's doing differently is whether the buyer intended it or not, when they purchase a Tesla car, it has a better environmental impact because it's using electricity over petrol. So it's just having that, looking to have that same positive impact, but just using a business model to do it. Now that's in the developed world, obviously, and Zipline addresses this same thing and uses the same definition, but in the developing world. And what they are using is drone technology to transport blood and medical supplies to hard to reach areas in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is a fantastic company. And what they are doing is tapping into the delivery service, which already existed, but before this model was put in place, it took 6 hours for a delivery driver to drive by car through really challenging topography to get blood to people in life-threatening situations. So 6 hours with this, with just access to this product and service, now it can take 15 minutes. So that's saving lives just by simply providing access and that option to something that already existed that does it better and has the intention to have a social impact. So that's what social enterprise is. And we
also, sorry, just on Zipline, it also just shows the opportunity that social business has to work with charity and in the space of charity. So this is now the largest commercial drone business in the world, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation just funded it to expand to Ghana. So it just shows really nicely how there's business, but it works in conjunction with charity to solve issues and to look at, in this instance, like vaccines and blood transfusions, which if you need it immediately. And this shortens that time down. It's also cheaper than the original service. So it again just shows that if you're solving a problem and you're making it more affordable and available, it just makes a lot of sense, and it just shows that business model in that positive space.
Definitely, and because it's not reliant on external funding, it's completely self-sufficient. It means that as they grow, they're able to employ people in the local area. So that's providing jobs to the local community as well, and young engineers in Africa. So that's incredible. And there's a great TED talk by the CEO of Zipline, which I really recommend watching. And he talks about how constantly he's referred to as people thank him for his charity, and he says, no, this is not charity, this is enterprise. And I want to say that because it has so much power as an enterprise to pull, 350 million Rwandan youth out of poverty by providing job opportunities as well. So really exciting space. And the way we do this is using that prior research and all of those goals and the directions from the United Nations to work alongside charity and government, but with projects that come from that. So these are the projects that we currently work on. And I wanted to show a little video that's come from the Solar Consulting Project. So this is one of the trekkers or interns just talking about this project in India. So I'll play that one as well.
Hey guys, my name is Mandy. I'm here today with the energy team, the energy infrastructure team for PEV. Today we set out to go around Bhubanesh, around the northern region of Cuttack, and talk to local businesses. Specifically, we were looking at handling around 20 different businesses, kind of discussing with them, establishing a relationship with PEV as well as them, and discussing their reliability of energy and whether or not they actually require a solar energy solution.
So that's the solar project. And as you can see, they're working within solar, which, but also around how you can integrate that and other levels of professional skills that you need to acquire, stakeholder meetings and the like. So it's that exposure and training in that environment as well. And then some of the other projects, just to give you some visuals on it, this is the microfinance project. So looking at how you can help give access to people to better manage their money. There's the Sustainable Stoves project. So that's looking at how can you have safer cooking methods that use less wood so that it's better for the environment, but also for people's health. Hidden Hunger project. So that's looking at how can you increase people's awareness around the nutrition of what they're eating, and that's via an app. There's agriculture-based projects. So this is Diversity Arrays Technology. It's partnered with a company in Australia looking at can we apply their technology to the agricultural space, which agriculture in one way or another touches everybody. So looking to have improvements there. and the female sanitation project. So that's looking at empowering women and girls through better management of their period. And those are the projects. But like I said in the beginning and touched on two issues, was there's this state of the world and global issues working around that. But then there's also empowering students and young people. So the future who are going to be working on this, how do we give them the tools and the exposure to be able to do this so much better and be better equipped and prepared to tackle these things going forward. And that's where we do put both a lot of planned workshops and training around the internships, but we also have, just inherently when you're on these projects, there's other benefits as well. So we have these workshops that we run. I want to go through we have credit and grant options as well, sorry. So we have a lot of students who come on board with us, but it can be built in and integrated with their degree. And some of the universities where that has happened are on the screen. And then it's just, this is part of what Jess does as well. And my job too is looking at how can we better integrate that and build relationships so that you can be recognized for the work that you're doing. And that's really important. Just like any domestic internship at home, just the nature of this is that it's overseas. So that's really fantastic. And then as well, we have these planned workshops. So one of the ones that people get a lot of benefit out of is the pitch practice workshop. So this is a bit, there's going to be a video on this, but it's essentially putting people in the position to practice public speaking. Communication is such a big one, and it's something that really puts people out of their comfort zone. So I'll just play that video as well.
Hey, my name's Nick. I'm the group leader here in India. Today we're working on pitch practice, which is where trekkers get an opportunity to practice their public speaking techniques and also get a chance to practice pitching their projects. This is particularly relevant when we're out in the communities talking to locals, because if we aren't able to effectively and efficiently describe our projects, then they won't have an idea of what we're doing, and building that rapport is much more difficult. So we're getting that chance to work on these skills today in a closed environment and then take it out into the field where we can execute.
So those are all the intentional things that we do around personal professional training, but there's a lot of things that are just inherent. For example, the teams are all multidisciplinary. So these are people that shared the same vested interest in being on a project where they could go overseas and have impact and learn about this space and just be involved. But so they share that, but don't necessarily share the same academic background or experience. So we've had people from all these different degrees be involved, and then that's extra networking and learning from these different degrees, which is just completely the future, is multidisciplinary teams. And then as well, this is just a picture from the group that I was with in Fiji in December, just gone. It's just having exposure to people from all over Australia. So these internships do run all over. And this group was students from Queensland, students from New South Wales, students from Adelaide, Western Australia, and Victoria as well. So really getting to build these positive relationships that are both good just personally, but also then professionally if you needed to pull on people later on.
I think it's important to link as well. If we look back, not that we need to go back in the slides, but if you recall, there was that study that was done in 2016, 2019. It's done every year, and it is available to you guys to look at. And it's generally just saying what attributes are graduate employees looking for in applicants, and they're constantly saying the same thing. And it's surprising what they're saying, but it's also not surprising. It's really basic stuff. They want you to have a degree. They want you to have studied something and to specialize, but they want you to be able to communicate. They want you to be a good listener, a good problem solver, and they want you to be able to work in a team. All of those things are so obvious, but if you really think about how to actually apply those skills, you can say you're a good communicator, but if you get sat down in an interview and they say, tell me a story about how you were in a difficult situation and you had to solve this problem with different disciplines, what story are you going to tell them? Like, what are you going to give as an example to illustrate how you've been in that situation and how you've achieved that? And you're talking to people who are talking to hundreds of other people with this kind of experience. So if you're talking about team projects at university, it doesn't quite cut it. You need to show that you've been in pressure situations that have actually, challenged you and put you in an uncomfortable position, and you've had to rise to that occasion. So when you're looking at those multidisciplinary teams, it's not just good communication or working with other people. It's about bringing your skill set, being able to translate it in a simple yet effective way to somebody who doesn't have the same skill set. So you're able to bring to the table your knowledge and your experience to people that don't have that same background. And another sort of thing that we see coming off that is people underestimating how much they actually can bring to the table there. All of these students here, they would have gone through the same sort of recruitment process, and we make sure that they understand how much they're actually bringing to the table. Project Everest and a lot of other businesses and all of the successful projects we have, they are a combination of a few things. One, incredible impact partners and community relationships in country. It's also amazing university partners, but it's students. And it's students bringing ideas about how things should work or how things need to change and how they should be done a little bit differently to how they've always been done. Because if we would just, we wouldn't still be having these problems if we could just do what we've always done. So there's a few points there just to connect the value of multidisciplinary teams and what that actually means, the value of students and what you actually bring to the table, and being able to illustrate that in an interview, or if you're looking at grad roles or even grad internships, there's a recruitment process there, and you're going to have to tell a story about your experience. And so you're going to have to need examples of doing that in a real world context.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. Yeah, completely spot on, Jess. And the way that we bring these students in is through the internships that pair and run in conjunction with their degree, or at least just to complement it. So they run in the university holiday breaks so that it doesn't interrupt any university schedules. And then there's the 4 countries that we operate in, and they are rolling projects that exist there. And that's Malawi in Africa, Fiji, Timor-Leste, and India. And then there's the option to go away for just the 4 weeks, so to do a 1-month internship, or to have the option to do 8 or 12 weeks as well. And again, June, July won't be going ahead, but looking for December, January, and February, and we'll be taking students away then. And the other thing that I think is really important, like I didn't just chuck this up for the likes, is just to illustrate that a huge part, because this is that new space that people don't immediately think or can visualize what social enterprise looks like, is that we're really committed to making sure that the message shows that collaborative work that is happening overseas, that is being led by young people. And it's just so powerful to show that you can have that seat at the table. It was something that I personally was frustrated about and resented that I felt like I had to wait my turn to be involved with all of this stuff and to be able to see it or do anything about it. But that's just not the case. And it's about like creating that access for it. So we try to do a lot around sharing that with people and sharing that through stories and visuals as well. So that's a really good place to get even more information or see even more stories around it too. But
yeah, I think the save stories on there is a great way, because you could have a look at the impact and you could have a look at what actually people are doing on the ground as well. So what does it actually look like to go on an internship overseas? What does it actually look like to work on solar, domestic solar panels? Like, what does it actually look like to work in a business that's trying to develop a microfinance concept for a stakeholder? What does that actually look like? And that kind of picture's worth 1,000 words kind of thing. This is a video. So even if it's not Project Everest, whatever you kind of looking at, have a look at their social media and have a look at their save stories and their photos and see what they're actually saying about themselves for that insight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's everything we had on the overview. So happy to move into questions and everything now as well.
Yeah, so I've just set up the, sorry, I didn't set it up at all, but I just posted on the chat if anyone wanted to ask any questions to question away there. And we do have an idea of kind of what we wanted to share, but obviously wanted to hand it over to you to make sure that you get your questions answered. But what we were thinking is that we wanted just to share the situation here. So Abbey has come on board as a student. So she was in your position really not that long ago and has moved through and has ensured that she is now in a graduate role. And I'm the first person that she actually spoke to and was responsible for hiring her. And so I look for students to come on as in the internship, and I also look for students in grad roles. So I know what we're looking for. So I thought that the either side of that would be a really great insight. So we can share that story, but before we do that, I obviously just wanted to make sure that you get your questions across. So you can either take yourself on mute and ask the question, or you can write it in the Zoom, the chat box there, whichever you'd like.
Yeah, hi.
Hi
I have a
guys.
question.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, you can go ahead.
No, ladies first.
Okay. I was just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the eligibility criteria to be a part of this project, since I'm an international student in Melbourne. So I just wanted to understand more about that.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you for your question. As a Melbourne international student, you're more than welcome to apply. The only restrictions would be your personal visa restrictions. So everyone obviously has a different circumstance, but as long as your visa allows you to travel outside of Australia and then return back to Australia, then there's no problem at all. The countries that we operate, they also have different, depending on your passport, they have different processes for visa applications. But once you're at that stage with Project Everest, we can't apply for it on your behalf or anything, but we guide you through that process and we support you through that process. So yeah, more than welcome international students. We have a large amount of international students. So yeah, there's no restrictions from Project Everest end.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. And then Brad, did you have another question? I see one's come through the chat as well, so we'll do that next. Brad, you're on mute, sorry, just letting you know. Classic.
Classic.
That's better. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Great start. Yeah, I'm at Griffith Film School. Unfortunately, film is one of those things that's quite hard to study online, despite the fact that everyone's watching their screens at the moment. So unfortunately, I'm concerned that I literally haven't been studying for the last month because there's nothing we can do and the university isn't particularly supportive of that. I've looked online at our university and they have basically said we need 80 credit points before we can even go into this program. Do you accept students that through COVID have been affected by this and by December may not have those 80 credit points because of the type of degree we're using or doing?
Yeah, so
supposed to be doing?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and I'm sure there's a few that are in that same position because everything is just obviously shifted, upside down. So sorry to hear that is happening for you, but we do have a quite a close relationship with Griffith University. They've been incredible. We've got some particular programs that we run with Griffith in Fiji, and we have new Colombo Plan funding for those students. Obviously, with COVID, we can't travel and actually do those programs right now. So they're just kind of on hold until we understand what's happening in the world. But in the meantime, we are looking at virtual internships, and you'll find that a lot of programs or providers are actually looking at virtual internships to do exactly that, to allow students to continue to gain, use their credits and gain those credits so they can continue to track along to their graduate date there. So for us, there isn't any restrictions on what you need to be studying or your prerequisites. That's all up to your university. So if we were to run, which we are looking at, running a virtual internship, there'd be nothing from our end stopping you from enrolling on that. It would just be up to your faculty and your head of school as to whether it was, ticked all the learning outcomes for you to be able to get credit. So that's, once you have the information from Project Everest, you're able to take that to your school and say, can I do this? Would you recognize it? And I think this space has been really flexible with that. And there's a lot out there in virtual internships, not just with Project Everest. So I think if you have a bit of a dig and see what's available, even internationally, you might have some options there.
And it's also just worth mentioning as well that remembering that the people that you're speaking with in universities are just people. And when I've gone, because I received credit twice, both for my internship, and then I went through and did my team leadership training and wanted to have that accredited as well. And it was about talking to an academic who I was familiar with and asking them who would be best to speak to. And then speaking to another person, having the information from Project Everest about what it was and like those learning outcomes and things, and just presenting that case to them. And ultimately I ended up going in with saying, I can either do this ridiculous course that's not actually going to help my degree in the way that I want it to, or I can focus it towards this area that I want. And I talked about it that way and just had conversations with them, and then it led to getting credit. So it's about just having those conversations in a lot of instances. No worries. We've got 2 questions online as well. So the first one was, can you explain more about financial support options? And the second one is sort of similar, so we can do them together. It was, are there any fees that apply? Any fee that we have to pay in order to go through the internship? So Jess, did you want to grab those ones as well?
Yeah. So the first one, can you explain more on the financial support options? So it depends on a few different things. So each university has different ways to support you in doing this. So if you're looking at work integrated learning, you can speak to work integrated learning team and say, what kind of options are there for me? And if they're able to align this with their learning outcomes, there's travel grants, there's scholarships, there's also new Colombo Plan funding if they've had a partnership with Project Everest. So it depends on, one, your university, then your faculty, and then also your study plan. So it's very difficult for us to answer that question because it's up to your university what they award you. So it is something that you need to do through your university. We do, however, with a few of our partners, have that partnership and apply for that new Colombo Plan funding. So because it's in conjunction with Project Everest, we're able to give you more information on it because it's linked to our projects. A lot of this information is on our website because there are so many different universities and so many different circumstances that are a bit different. So the general answer is yes, there is support, although it does vary depending on your study load and your university and your faculty, and then also which projects you want to do. So the best advice that I can give you is to look at the website under credit and grants. Look for your university there. And if you don't see it there, that's completely fine because you don't have to do this through your university. And then the 3 points of contact that I would say speak to is, one, your work integrated learning at your university. There could be a central work integrated learning, or it could be within your faculties. 2, speak to the mobility unit. And 3, speak to your head of school or your course coordinator. At the moment, there's going to be a big hold on this. They're not going to be wanting to support any kind of overseas travel. It's all going to, because as you know, we've said June and July have been cancelled, and we're keeping open for summer. Because it's so far away, we have the expectation that it's running, but if not, we're switching to those virtual internships as well. So that's with the university. And then fee, hopefully that answers that, sorry. please write on there if it doesn't, or feel free to ask. And then the fees. Yeah, so at the bottom of the website, so if you scroll to the Project Everest website, you scroll to the very bottom, and then it has terms and conditions, and it has all your payment options. So what's included and what's not included. So it will be very different for a virtual internship, but if you're thinking about traveling overseas for 4 weeks and having your flights, food, accommodation, and insurance covered, that there's obviously a cost there, but that program fee does cover all of that. And the only things you really need to think about are your visa and what you want to do on the weekend. Like if you want to travel, or, you know, you're obviously in another country, so people like to explore where they are, you know, and do that kind of touristy thing. So Abby's just put that, that link. Thank you. So all of this information is on the website. And so if you don't go through the university, you can self-fund. So that's the other option, that people can save up for it. Around 50% of students do self-fund. They either get their family support, or they're working and they work casual or part-time while they're studying, and then save up for it, just as you would for, you know, either the study that you're doing, or short internships or short courses, or any travel that you'd like to do in the same kind of way. So you save up for it, or you see if you can do it through your university. And late to joining, no worries, recordings will be available as well.
Yeah, and the breakdown is in that pricing, inclusions and exclusions. So that talks about like each thing that is actually, that you've actually paid for there, and that's inclusive of like, there's flight vouchers, so that your flights can be included, and those kinds of things. So, and if you're like, because I see, like I can recognize as a student that when you see it, you're like, what am I actually getting with that money? To like put it into perspective as well. When I did my thesis, I traveled with my university. It was a completely like university run project, and it was 2 weeks in Fiji. And when you think about like the travel costs getting there, the fact that you need to have insurance, food, there's a subscription with International SOS, which manages all of your security and safety and risk, which is just like a huge thing. All those little things that add up. It was, for 2 weeks, it was nearly 4,000. So it's like, there's like, we have that complete understanding, and Jess can go into a bit more, but that the payment plans option is like a thing as well. And there's like certain amounts that you can pay upfront, and then it can move into payment plans. So we like completely recognize that we're students, and like it to go overseas, it wouldn't be free. So just like how we can work best with you guys, like the way that we go about it, and we're like people. So it's like just definitely like asking us, explaining your situation, and coming up with a plan that works for you guys.
Yeah, so for one of the questions, is there a breakdown of the inclusions and exclusions? So that link above, pricing and inclusions and exclusions, it has what's there, what's not included, and the cost of each. And yeah, the interviews, I'd love to talk about that, because that's one of my favorite things to do, actually. And just to answer that question, definitely there's flexibility with, and the whole thing is on a payment plan automatically. But there's also flexibility to that. So if that initial payment plan doesn't work for you, that can change. It's a conversation, absolutely. So we've always been super flexible with that. There's an understanding that, hey, going overseas costs money, training, you know, we have to pay the staff, and we need to pay for the venue, and you know, there's that understanding, but obviously that this is an investment, and people are more comfortable paying things over time, so that's not a worry. So the interviews, yeah, I'd love to talk about that, because as I said, I've been doing them from, you know, day one, and it's been still one of the most interesting things that I do, because I get to speak to so many different people who want to do this for so many different reasons. I guess the inspiration for each person's why is just, it's forever changing, and you can see the kind of I guess the theme of students coming through, and what they're worried about, and what they're thinking about, and what they're passionate about really changes. So it's great. And we try and at every single point make sure that whether you stay involved or not, you gain something from it, you learn something from it. So at the interview, usually we have a group interview, And we go through a whole series of things, which is really centered to educate you. So it's an interview, but it's an information session. So there's group activities because we want to see how you can work in a group. Because as we've talked about before, same with all other big businesses, they want to see that you can communicate within a team, that you're going to deal with team dynamic issues effectively, that you're going to bring something to the table, that you're there for the right reasons. We're interested in the same thing. So we run activities to try and get that, try and see that and get that out of you. And we also run you through a whole heap of things just purely for education. So we're talking about social business and social enterprise. What is that? How is that done well? How is that done poorly? What is that in this new space? How does that differ to charity and development? What does humanitarian engineering look like? What are the problems in the world, and how do what we do now with our study, with our internships and with our career, how do they link? You might want to, you're looking at these kind of global issues and you're thinking, well, this is an issue. I want to have a career that does something about this, but what does that look like? I'm studying engineering or I'm studying business, but how do I actually do something good with that? Or how do I have an impact with that? So,
and what's
we
nice
talk about that.
Yeah, and I don't think it really matters what background of study that you're doing, because it is a passion-driven thing. And I think that this space touches absolutely everybody because it's all part of the world that we're like citizens of. And it means that whatever skills that you can bring is a value add to any team that's working on something like this. Like the one that comes to mind was thinking about Brad, yourself, is doing film was it, I believe, and just how that can have a place, because talking about like communicating these messages and media is just so important to be able to like talk about it and get that message out. So it really doesn't matter. I've had people on my teams that are politics students and have no idea initially, like they care but don't actually know what a job connecting that care and interest in their study looks like. And it's interesting to bring them onto these kinds of projects because they get to see and actually practice the different skills that they might have. For instance, this politics student was really good at structuring a conversation and like brought a lot of the skills that she had at uni to be a really core member of the team every time that we went out to liaise with different higher up businesses or organizations in the community. And that was just really exciting to see.
Sorry, can I just ask another?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, just a very quick question. I was supposed to have an interview yesterday, but I didn't get a link sent through, so I couldn't join any meeting. Who's the best person to give a buzz to today? I spoke with Tom, I believe it was.
Yeah. Okay, I'll send through your name. Because that's,
okay.
Just check your spam folder, because a lot of it actually ends up in spam.
Okay, not a problem.
But yeah, definitely check that out. I can send your name through and they can give you a call to make sure that works. Yeah, sorry about that.
Great. No, look, that's not a problem. I understand things are a bit chaotic at the moment, but I'll let you keep going because I know you've got limited time. Thank you so much.
No, that's okay. Please, if you have questions, write them on there because we can send out an email. I don't want you guys to have any questions that you don't really get answered, even if in the short time that we have, because it's not just, try and think about it not just as Project Everest. Like this is an industry who is recruiting and is looking for students and people who are trying to do something with their career, trying to get into this workspace, trying to do recognize that there's issues in the world and how can what I do feed into that space. So please feel free to ask these questions.
Yeah, I've just thrown up this QR code on the screen as well. Jeremy, I think you might have been putting it up, but I've chucked it on there just in the meantime, because what this takes you to is a landing page where you can put just some details through, and then a student alumni, so someone who is still studying but has stayed involved with us in an employment capacity, to offer their alumni experience, to talk individually to people that are interested and help discuss what it might be that they could be involved in whether they are appropriate for us, whether we're appropriate for them. So this is the way that you initiate that initial conversation. So just entering your details and they'll reach out to you. And so it's just having that more personalized conversation. I still remember my phone call back like more than a year and a half ago, where you get to talk to someone who has done this and has wanted to stay involved as a result of that. to continue talking to people, just generally again about the space, but also just about whether they want to use this as a bridge into the space. So you can pull up, you should be able to just use like a camera on a lot of smartphones to see it, or you can just look up Project Everest and the Get Involved page up the top. So obviously not like signing on to definitely be a part of the program, but it's just about offering that communication and then a pathway into it if you decide that you want to.
Yeah, so we can, I do still want to share the kind of like Abby's experience and my experience as a recruiter. So we'll write that out and get that sent out to you. So you have both of those sides of the story. I think it's really interesting to now see it in hindsight. And I think what she did at certain stages really ensured what is the reason that she's here now. You know, she called me. We get so much admin and for students to do, and I'm like, yeah, I'll get to it. But she called me and she was like, I need you to do this now. And, you know, there's things like that. So, you know, there's more context there, but I just wanted to really outline that to you because I think it's, it makes a big difference to realize that when you're talking to different recruiters and to different industry, they're people, and they want to work with someone that they can work with and get along with, and spend time with, and who care about the work that they're doing. And yeah, just remember that it's a person behind the screen, you know, and it's just about that connection and that genuine passion and connection there. So we'll write that out and get it sent to you.
Everyone, thank you for your time today. That does conclude the session. We need to wrap this up now. But essentially, your email addresses will be shared with the Project Everest team. So please have a look in your inbox and you should be expecting an email from them communicating. But thank you, everyone, for attending. I hope you all got a lot out of it.
Thank you so much for your time, Stacey.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
bye.